Rain fell over the glowing streets of Kareth City, the capital of the Tsarine Empire. The silver towers that stretched into the clouds were beautiful, but to a human like Elias Ward they felt cold and unwelcoming. He walked alone through the narrow worker lanes, his coat soaked, his toolbox heavy at his side. The other workers, mostly aliens with tall, glimmering eyes, hurried away from him as if he carried disease. Humans were tolerated here, not respected. Elias didn't mind much. He had learned to live quietly. He fixed things, machines, gates, old droids, anything that could earn him a few credits. That night, however, something would happen that no machine could prepare him for. He turned into a dim alley that led to his workshop, and there he saw her, a small alien girl, maybe 8 years old, was trying to walk. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes too big for her tiny face, and one of her legs hung uselessly. She leaned on a broken metal crutch that bent under her weight. Every few steps the crutch slipped and she fell to her knees. But she didn't cry. She just tried again. Elias hesitated. Humans were not allowed to touch noble aliens without permission. It was one of the Empire's oldest laws, yet watching her struggle cut through his heart. He stepped forward. "Hey," he said softly. "Don't move. You'll hurt yourself." The girl looked up, startled. Her bright eyes widened in fear. You're human." "I am," he said simply. "But I can fix that crutch for you." She stepped back, shaking her head. "No, my guardian will be angry. He says, humans shouldn't touch me." Elias crouched to her level, lowering his voice. "Then tell your guardian I only touched metal, not you." Her lip trembled, and for the first time she looked unsure instead of afraid. He gently picked up the bent crutch from the wet ground. The shaft was cracked near the joint, cheap metal, poorly made. With his tools he tightened a few bolts, straightened the frame, and tested it against the ground. "Try now," he said. She hesitated again, then took it from him. Slowly she placed the crutch under her arm and pushed herself upright. This time it didn't bend. She took one step, then another. Her face lit up like a sunrise. "It works," she whispered, half laughing, half crying. "It really works." Elias smiled for the first time that day. "It's not perfect, but it'll do until I can make you a better one." "A better one?" she repeated as if she didn't believe anyone would bother. He nodded. "Come by my shop tomorrow. I'll build you something strong, something that won't break again." Before she could answer, a voice shouted from the far end of the alley. "Lyra, where are you?" The girl froze, her eyes filled with panic. "I have to go," she whispered. "If they see me with you—" "Go," Elias said quickly. "I'll be here tomorrow." She ran, well, half limped, half ran, disappearing into the night. A group of armored guards passed moments later, their golden cloaks dragging through the puddles. They didn't see him in the shadows. When the street was empty again, Elias sighed. "Lyra," he murmured. Strange name for a child of nobles. He went back to his shop, but sleep didn't come. He kept thinking about the burns on her leg, the fear in her eyes. Someone had hurt her, and no one had helped. The next morning he woke early. The rain had stopped and sunlight glowed faintly through the city's glass domes. He started gathering spare parts, light metal rods, a stabilizing core, and a grip made from soft polymer. He wasn't just building a crutch. He was building a promise. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had crossed an invisible line. In the Tsarine Empire, compassion from a human toward the highborn was forbidden. It was seen as arrogance, as if a human thought they could fix what the Empire had already decided was broken. But Elias didn't care about rules. He cared about the girl who tried to walk through the rain. Outside, the streets of Kareth buzzed with morning life. None of the aliens passing by knew that in a small workshop on the edge of the city, a human was making something that would soon shake their world, a simple crutch, built not from steel but from kindness, and far away. Inside the imperial palace, the same little girl sat by her window, tracing the edge of her broken old crutch with her fingers. She whispered one word under her breath. Tomorrow. She didn't know that her tomorrow would bring light, and also danger, because by helping her stand, Elias had just taken the first step toward something that could bring the entire empire to its knees. Morning broke over Kareth City in soft gold light, slipping between the silver towers like a secret the city didn't want to share. The air was still wet from last night's rain, and the streets shimmered as the first crowds began their daily march to work. But in a quiet corner of the industrial district, a small workshop hummed with purpose. Elias Ward hadn't slept much. His hands had worked through the night, driven by something he didn't fully understand. The image of the little alien girl, Lyra, kept flashing before his eyes. Her weak leg trembling, her small voice whispering, "It works." He had fixed broken machines for years, but this time it was different. He wasn't repairing a device. He was building hope. The table before him was covered in scraps, rods, gears, glowing fiber cables. He had chosen light durasteel, stronger than what the aliens used for prosthetics. He carved smooth lines into the frame, shaping it for balance and comfort. At the top, he placed a soft polymer grip that could shift and adjust with body heat, a small human trick he had learned in his engineering days on Mars. He tested the joints, adjusted the height, and tightened every screw until the crutch felt alive in his hands. When he finally lifted it up, sunlight struck the metal and made it shine. "There," he whispered. "Fit for a princess." He paused, realizing what he'd said. If Lyra really was from the noble class, helping her might be more dangerous than he imagined. Still, he pushed the thought aside. Right was right. A gentle chime echoed through the shop door. Elias looked up and saw her standing there. Lyra. She wore a long cloak, the hood pulled over her head, but her glowing blue eyes peeked through. "You said I could come," she whispered nervously. "I told the guards I was going to the temple." Elias smiled softly. "Then let's not waste your lie." She giggled faintly, limping forward on her bent crutch. When she reached the workbench, Elias took the old one from her and placed his new creation in her hands. It was light, almost weightless. "Try it," he said. Lyra hesitated, then pushed herself up, her injured leg trembling slightly. The moment the crutch touched the ground, it locked into perfect balance. She took one step, then another, then three. The sound of her steps echoed in the small shop. Elias held his breath. Lyra stopped and turned toward him. "It doesn't slip," she whispered in shock. "It feels like it listens to me." Elias grinned. "It's designed to. It adjusts its pressure when you move. It helps you balance." Her face brightened with childlike wonder. "You made this for me?" He nodded. "You needed it." Lyra's small hands trembled as she touched the polished surface. "No one ever made something just for me," she said quietly. "Not even in the palace." The word palace made Elias freeze. So his guess had been right. She wasn't just any noble. She was someone very high, maybe even royal. He tried to stay calm, pretending he hadn't heard. "Well," he said gently, "now you have something made by human hands. Don't tell anyone where you got it." Lyra looked up. "Why not?" "Because," Elias said, setting down his tools, "some people in this city don't like seeing humans help aliens. It makes them angry." "But it was kindness," she said firmly. "How can kindness be wrong?" Elias smiled sadly. "In some empires, even kindness is dangerous." For a moment, they both stood in silence. Then Lyra did something unexpected. She hugged him. Her small arms barely reached around his waist, but her voice was steady. "Thank you, Elias. You fixed more than my leg." He froze, caught between warmth and fear. The door chime rang again, but this time it wasn't gentle. The sound was sharp, metallic, followed by footsteps outside. Elias moved quickly, guiding Lyra behind a storage crate. Through the window, he saw 2 Imperial guards walking past, their golden armor gleaming in the sunlight. They spoke into comm devices, scanning the area. "Keep your head down," he whispered. Lyra nodded, her eyes wide. When the guards moved away, Elias exhaled slowly. "You need to go home," he said. "Before they find out you were here." She shook her head. "They can't hurt you, Elias. I'll tell my grandfather you helped me." He frowned. "Grandfather?" She blinked innocently. "The Emperor." Elias's blood ran cold. The Emperor of the Zarine Empire, one of the most feared rulers in the galaxy. He forced a smile, trying to hide his shock. "That's nice of you, Lyra, but maybe don't tell him just yet, okay?" She tilted her head, confused. "Why, won't he be happy?" Elias looked out the window, where the guards were still scanning the streets. "Because, little one, not every ruler likes being shown that a human did what his people could not." Lyra looked down at her new crutch, her small fingers tracing the smooth metal. "Then I'll keep it a secret," she whispered. "But I'll never forget what you did." She smiled once more and left, her steps light and confident. For the first time, she didn't limp. Elias stood in his quiet shop, heart racing. He should have felt proud. Instead, he felt a strange, heavy fear settle in his chest. Somewhere deep inside, he knew. What he had built that morning wasn't just a crutch. It was a spark. And soon that spark would set the empire on fire. The next morning, the Tsarine palace was anything but peaceful. The golden towers that touched the clouds shimmered in the rising sun. But inside, tension rippled through the halls like a silent storm. Servants whispered, guards hurried, and the royal advisors stood frozen near the throne room doors. Something had happened. Something forbidden. At the center of the grand chamber sat Emperor Zareth, ruler of the Tsarine Empire. His eyes, cold and sharp as polished glass, scanned the trembling servants before him. Around his throne burned floating blue flames that marked his authority, a symbol of power feared across 100 worlds. "Speak," his voice rumbled, deep and slow. "You said my granddaughter was seen outside the palace walls yesterday." A captain of the guard knelt, armor clinking. "Yes, my lord. The young Princess Lyra was found leaving the outer districts before dawn. She was spotted returning. With a new walking device, the Emperor's jaw tightened. A new device? From whom?" The captain hesitated. "From a human, Your Majesty." The throne room fell silent. The hum of energy lamps dimmed as if the palace itself held its breath. "A human?" Zareth repeated, each syllable heavy. "A human touched royal blood?" The captain bowed lower, voice trembling. "It appears so, my lord. The child was seen with him twice. She now uses the human's creation, a strange crutch that adapts to her movement." For a moment, no one dared move. Then the Emperor's voice exploded like thunder. "Find that man! Bring him before me. Alive or broken, I do not care." The guard saluted sharply and rushed out. The order spread through the palace within minutes. Across the city, scanners activated, drones soared into the skies, and loudspeakers boomed with the Emperor's command. "By order of the Tsarine Emperor, anyone hiding a human engineer will face royal punishment." Meanwhile, in the heart of the industrial sector, Elias Ward was busy repairing a damaged generator when he heard the announcement echo through the streets. The voice from the loudspeaker was cold and official. "The Emperor demands the arrest of a human who has interfered with royal affairs. Report any suspicious activity immediately." Elias froze mid-step. His stomach turned to ice. He didn't need to ask who they were looking for. A group of alien workers nearby murmured nervously. One of them, a tall, scaled alien named Rek, glanced toward him. "You heard that, human? They're hunting one of your kind." Elias forced a chuckle. "Guess we're all suspicious now," but inside his mind raced. He turned off his tools, grabbed his satchel, and locked the workshop door. His heart pounded so loudly it drowned the city noise. "Lyra," he whispered. "What have you done?" Back at the palace, the young princess stood before her grandfather, clutching her glowing new crutch tightly. Her face was pale, her lips trembling, but her eyes were steady. "Grandfather," she began softly, "you cannot punish him." The Emperor's gaze was cold as stone. "You disobeyed royal law, Lyra. You allowed a human to touch you, to make something for you. Do you know what that means?" She nodded, voice shaking but firm. "It means kindness isn't dead even if the Empire has forgotten it." Gasps filled the room. No one had ever spoken to the Emperor like that. Zareth rose from his throne, his golden cloak sweeping across the floor. "Kindness?" he growled. "Kindness is weakness, and weakness brings war." Lyra took a shaky step forward. "Then maybe this empire needs a little weakness," she said. "He didn't hurt me. He helped me walk again." "Isn't that worth something?" The Emperor's expression cracked for a moment. Just a flicker of something human buried deep. But it was gone in an instant. "Enough!" he roared. "You are young and foolish. You do not understand what humans are capable of." He turned toward his advisors. "Double the search squads. I want that man found before the next sunrise." Lyra's voice rose, desperate now. "Please don't hurt him." But Zareth's words cut through her plea like a blade. He broke the law, and the law will be obeyed. Outside, as night approached, storm clouds gathered once more over Kareth City. The neon lights flickered, casting long shadows across the streets. Patrol drones scanned every alley. Human workers were questioned, searched, and dragged away for inspection. In his small workshop, Elias packed what few tools he could carry. His hands shook, not from fear of dying, but from something deeper. He had lived quietly for years, careful never to break the rules. But one act of compassion had painted a target on his back. He looked down at his empty workbench, the place where he had built Lyra's crutch, and whispered, "I only wanted to help. Then he stepped into the dark streets, blending with the crowds. Somewhere above, the Emperor's banners flapped in the stormy wind, glowing gold and red, a symbol of power and pride. But in the shadows below, a human walked quietly, his name now forbidden, his kindness now a crime, and in the palace, a little girl sat by her window, staring into the city lights, whispering to herself, "I'll find you before they do." The game of mercy and power had begun, and the first move had already been made. The night wind howled through the metallic alleys of Kareth City, carrying with it the distant wails of sirens and the heavy thrum of search drones. Their red lights swept across the streets like watchful eyes. The Empire was hunting, and the name on every scanner, every broadcast, every soldier's datapad was Elias Ward. He moved through the back streets with quiet steps, the rain-soaked ground muffling his boots. The human engineer had shed his worker's coat and replaced it with a plain cloak to blend in. But no disguise could hide the tension in his face or the fire in his eyes. For most of his life, Elias had kept his head down. In a city where humans were seen as lesser, surviving meant being invisible. But now invisibility was gone. One act of kindness had turned him into a target of an empire. As he turned a corner, a mechanical voice echoed from the high speakers. "Attention, citizens of Kareth. The Emperor demands the capture of a human engineer responsible for unauthorized contact with royal blood. Report any sighting immediately." The crowd around him stiffened. Some aliens glanced toward Elias suspiciously. Others looked away, afraid. The fear of the Emperor was stronger than any friendship. Elias lowered his hood and slipped into a narrow alley between two warehouses. There, in the dim glow of a broken street lamp, an old alien was waiting. His leathery skin shimmered faintly, and his sharp eyes caught the light. "Torin," Elias breathed with relief. The old alien nodded, pulling him into the shadows. "I thought you'd be smarter than this, human," Torin muttered. "Helping royal blood? You might as well have signed your own death order." Elias leaned against the wall, catching his breath. "She was just a child, hurt, alone. What was I supposed to do, walk away?" Torin sighed deeply. "You humans, always acting on heart, not logic. That's why your kind both inspires and terrifies them." Outside, the sound of boots echoed closer. Elias peeked through a crack in the wall. Imperial guards were sweeping the area with handheld scanners. Their armor gleamed gold under the streetlights. "They're close," Elias whispered. Torin pointed toward the back door. "Go through the old scrapyard. It connects to the transport tunnels. Stay hidden. I'll mislead them." Elias grabbed his shoulder. "Why help me? You could be executed for this." The old alien smiled faintly, eyes full of tired wisdom. "Maybe it's time someone reminds the Empire what kindness looks like." Before Elias could reply, Torin stepped out into the open street, shouting at the guards. He went that way, toward the lower docks. The soldiers turned instantly, chasing the false trail. Elias hesitated for one last moment, then slipped through the door into the scrapyard. The scrapyard stretched for miles, a twisted graveyard of metal and machines. The air smelled of rust and oil. Elias moved quietly, crouching between old shuttle hulls and piles of mechanical debris. Each step crunched softly under his boots. A sudden noise made him freeze. A small figure stepped from behind a wrecked ship, her hood pulled low but her silver eyes glimmering in the dark. "Lyra," Elias whispered in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" She ran to him, her crutch glowing faintly with blue light. "I couldn't stay," she said, breathless. "They're saying terrible things about you. I had to warn you." "Lyra, this is madness," he hissed. "If they find you with me, they'll call it treason." "I don't care," she cried. "You saved me, Elias. You made me walk again. Now it's my turn to save you." Before he could answer, the faint hum of drone engines filled the air. Red search beams cut across the piles of scrap metal. Elias grabbed Lyra's hand. "Down," he whispered. They ducked behind a rusted hovercraft, the drone light sweeping inches above their heads. They waited, hearts pounding, until the sound faded. Elias exhaled shakily. "We need to get you back home, Lyra. You shouldn't be here." She shook her head fiercely. "No, if they take you, I'll tell everyone the truth. I'll tell them what you did for me." He looked at her small, determined face, royal blood yet fearless. In that moment, he understood something. The Empire's power wasn't built on strength alone. It was built on silence, and Lyra was refusing to be silent. "All right," he said softly, "but we can't stay here. They'll sweep this sector soon." He took her hand again, guiding her through the maze of junk toward the old tunnels. The path was dark, the air heavy with dust. Behind them, a deep voice echoed through the scrapyard, cold and commanding. "Search every inch. The Emperor wants the human alive." Lyra's eyes widened. "They found us." Elias turned sharply, gripping her crutch to steady her. "Then we keep moving." They slipped into a narrow tunnel just as spotlights lit up the yard behind them. Shouts followed, and the sound of running boots thundered in the distance. As they vanished into the dark, Elias whispered to himself, "If kindness is a crime, then let them arrest me for being human." And somewhere above, the Imperial Palace shone brightly in the storm clouds, its ruler unaware that his own granddaughter was now running through the night beside the man he wanted dead. The hunt had begun. But so had something far more dangerous: hope. The underground tunnel was silent except for the distant drip of water and the soft click of Lyra's glowing crutch against the stone floor. Elias led the way, a small lamp flickering in his hand. His heart still pounded from the chase above. The air smelled of oil, dust, and fear. Lyra walked close behind him, her cloak dragging slightly. She was breathing hard, but her steps were steady, stronger than before. The crutch he had built for her pulsed gently with blue light, responding to her movement like a living thing. "Slow down," she whispered. "You're walking too fast." Elias turned back, guilt flashing in his eyes. "Sorry, kid. I'm just trying to think." "About what?" "About how to survive," he said quietly. She frowned. "You helped me. Why do you need to run?" Elias stopped walking. The lamplight painted his tired face in golden shadow. "Because, Lyra, your people don't see it that way. They think I touched something sacred. They think I broke your laws." She tilted her head. "Then your laws are better. You help people, not hurt them." He smiled sadly. "Ours weren't always better either. Sometimes humans forget what it means to care. But when someone's hurt, we help. That's how I was raised." Lyra's eyes softened. "Then I'll remember that." Before Elias could reply, the tunnel walls trembled faintly. Somewhere above, engines roared, the sound of patrol skimmers sweeping the streets. The search was still on. He sighed. "We'll rest for a few minutes, then move again. The old subway lines lead out of the city. We can hide there until things cool down." Lyra sat on a stone ledge, resting her crutch beside her. Her eyes glowed softly in the dim light. "You're not going to leave me, right?" Elias blinked. "What?" "You're not like the others," she said. "Most people turn away when they see me limp. Even my tutors pretend not to notice." He crouched in front of her. "Listen, Lyra, I'm not leaving you. But you need to understand, if they find you with me, they won't just punish me. They'll punish you too." Her chin lifted. "Let them try." He couldn't help but laugh quietly. "You really are your grandfather's granddaughter." Her small smile faded at that. "My grandfather doesn't see people anymore. He only sees laws." Before he could answer, a sudden clang echoed down the tunnel. A metal door at the far end slammed open. Flashlights cut through the dark. Voices shouted, "Imperial Guards, go!" Elias hissed, pulling Lyra's hand. They ran down the tunnel, the crutch's blue light bouncing wildly with each step. The guards' boots thundered behind them, closing in. "This way!" Elias yelled, spotting an old service hatch. He pried it open and pushed Lyra inside. The small space was filled with cables and pipes. He crawled in after her, sealing the hatch just as footsteps thundered past outside. They waited in silence, breathing hard. The sound of boots faded, but the fear didn't. Lyra turned to him, whispering, "They'll never stop, will they?" Elias shook his head. "Not until they have me." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Then I won't let them." Before he could ask what she meant, she crawled toward the hatch. "Lyra, wait!" She pushed it open and stepped out into the tunnel, standing tall despite her small frame. The guards had circled back, their golden armor glowing under the tunnel lights. "There she is," one shouted. "The princess, she's with him." Elias scrambled after her. "Lyra, get back!" But she didn't move. Instead, she planted her crutch firmly and lifted her chin. Her voice rang through the tunnel, clear and fearless. "You will not touch him," she shouted. "If you arrest this human, you arrest me too." The guards hesitated. None dared to advance. Royal blood stood before them, defying an imperial order. "Princess, please," one of the captains said gently. "Step aside." "The Emperor commands."
My grandfather commands too much, she interrupted.
He calls mercy a crime. He calls kindness rebellion. Then maybe I am a rebel. The captain lowered his head, torn between duty and conscience. Behind him, whispers rose among the soldiers. Elias stepped forward slowly, placing a hand on her shoulder. Lyra, don't do this. She looked up at him, tears glimmering in her alien eyes. If I don't stand for you, who will? For a long moment, the tunnel was silent except for the soft hum of her crutch. Then the captain finally spoke, voice heavy with conflict. Take them, he ordered softly, but unharmed. The Emperor will decide their fate. The soldiers surrounded them, weapons low but ready. Lyra didn't flinch. She kept her head high as they led her and Elias away. Elias whispered, You didn't have to protect me. She glanced at him with a small, determined smile. You gave me back my legs, Elias. The least I can do is help you stand tall. As they were marched toward the glowing palace spires, the crowd gathered in silence, watching something they had never seen before. A child defying an emperor to protect a human. And somewhere in that crowd, hearts began to change. For the first time in years, the people of the empire saw courage not in power, but in compassion. The massive palace gates groaned open, and the echo rolled through the marble halls like thunder. The guards marched in 2 straight lines, golden armor gleaming under cold blue lights. Between them walked Elias Ward, hands bound, head unbowed. Beside him limped Princess Lyra, her glowing crutch tapping softly against the crystal floor, a faint rhythm of defiance that made even the guards uneasy. The grand chamber loomed ahead. Pillars of silver reached into darkness, carved with scenes of Czarine conquest. At the far end, sitting upon a throne carved from obsidian, was Emperor Zareth himself, his eyes sharp as blades, his golden cloak flowing like fire. The moment Elias stepped into the throne room, silence fell. The only sound was the distant hum of energy coils and Lyra's unsteady breathing. The Emperor rose slowly. So, he said, his voice deep and cold, this is the human who dares touch royal blood. Elias met his gaze without fear. I didn't touch royalty, he said calmly. I helped a child who had fallen. Whispers rippled through the crowd of nobles gathered along the walls. The Emperor's jaw tightened. Do you mock me, human? Elias shook his head. No, your majesty. I fixed what was broken. That's what I do. A tense pause followed. Lyra took a shaky step forward, clutching her crutch. Grandfather, please, he didn't harm me. He saved me. You saw what I was before. I couldn't even walk. Her voice trembled, but it carried through the entire chamber. Zareth turned his cold gaze toward her. You disobeyed my command. You left the palace mixed with commoners and accepted help from a human. You brought shame upon the throne. Lyra straightened her back despite her limp. Then call it shame, she said softly. But at least I can stand on my own now. Gasps filled the room. Several nobles looked away, afraid to be caught reacting. The Emperor's nostrils flared, but before he could speak, Elias stepped forward again. With respect, your majesty, Elias said. You rule an empire that can build fleets that cross galaxies. You command machines that can tear stars apart. But your people fear helping a child? A murmur of shock spread across the hall. One of the guards shoved Elias to his knees, but his eyes never left the Emperor's. Zareth descended from his throne, every step echoing like a heartbeat. You are bold for a human, he said quietly. Perhaps too bold. Elias looked up at him. Maybe. But sometimes it takes boldness to remind kings what compassion looks like. The Emperor's face hardened. You speak as if you understand my burden. I don't pretend to, Elias replied. But I understand this. Power means nothing if it destroys the kind people beneath it. The Emperor's aura flared, a faint golden shimmer of energy rippling across his armor. The crowd tensed. Then Lyra limped forward, standing between Elias and the throne. If you punish him, she said, voice trembling, then you punish me. Because I am guilty too. Her words froze the chamber. Even the guards hesitated. Zareth's eyes widened. You dare speak against your emperor? I speak to my grandfather, she whispered. The one who told me long ago that mercy is not weakness. Have you forgotten your own lesson? The emperor's face faltered for the briefest second, just a flicker of emotion. But pride crushed it away. Enough, he said, his voice shaking with restrained fury. The law is clear. Humans are forbidden to touch the royal bloodline. Then change the law, Lyra cried. The hall gasped again. The guards took a step forward, unsure whether to seize her or bow. Zareth's voice rose like thunder. Silence. He turned to his advisors. Prepare the sentence. The human will face execution at dawn. Let the galaxy see what happens when the lowborn defy the throne. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She stumbled forward, gripping her crutch for balance. No, please. You can't. Zareth turned his back. Take her away, he commanded. Two attendants stepped forward, hesitant but obedient. They reached for Lyra's arm, but she jerked away, glaring up at the Emperor. If you do this, she said through tears, you'll lose more than a human. You'll lose me. For the first time, the Emperor hesitated, but the eyes of his court were upon him, watching, judging, waiting. And a ruler built on fear could not afford mercy. Go to your chambers, he said at last. You will not leave them again. Lyra's voice broke. Then I'll escape again, and next time the whole city will know who you really are. The Emperor's shoulders stiffened, but he said nothing more. Guards dragged Elias away, his chains clinking softly. As they pulled him toward the dungeon, he glanced back one last time. Lyra stood beneath the towering throne, small but unyielding, her crutch glowing faintly in the dim light. Their eyes met. No words were spoken, but one promise passed between them. This wasn't the end. In the silent hall, as the Emperor returned to his throne, one thought echoed in his mind. Buried beneath pride and anger, she spoke like her mother once did. Before compassion was outlawed, and for the first time in years the Emperor wondered if he was ruling a kingdom, or destroying one. The twin suns rose slowly over Kareth City, painting the silver towers in shades of fire and gold. It should have been a beautiful morning. But the plaza below the Imperial Palace was heavy with silence and fear. Thousands of citizens gathered, nobles, soldiers, workers, even slaves, summoned to witness the execution of a human. In the center of the square stood a raised platform of dark stone. Chains hung from its sides, glowing faintly with containment energy. And there, beneath the shadow of the Emperor's balcony, stood Elias Ward. His wrists were bound, his clothes torn, his face calm. The sky above him was clear, but the air felt suffocating. Around him, alien guards stood in tight formation, their golden armor reflecting the morning light. A royal herald stepped forward and read from a scroll, his voice echoing across the city. By order of His Imperial Majesty Zareth, the human known as Elias Ward is sentenced to death for unlawful contact with royal blood and the corruption of imperial order. The crowd murmured. Some whispered in sympathy, others in fear. Few dared to speak aloud, but many could not look away. From the palace balcony, the Emperor appeared. His robes shimmered like molten gold, his crown glowed faintly with energy, and his face was a mask of command. To his right stood his advisors. To his left, an empty space. Lyra was nowhere to be seen. Zareth raised a hand and the murmuring ceased. His voice boomed through the amplifiers. Let this be a lesson. The Empire thrives on order, not mercy. No law is above the throne, and no being, human or otherwise, shall defy it. He lowered his hand toward the executioner, signaling to begin. The guards moved forward, but then a new sound broke through the silence, a voice small yet clear, rising from somewhere within the crowd. Stop! Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the plaza. The guards froze. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. From the far edge of the platform, a young figure stepped into the light. Her cloak fluttered in the wind, and her crutch glowed like a beacon. It was Princess Lyra. She climbed the steps slowly, each movement defiant, each step echoing louder than the Emperor's decree. The guards hesitated, unsure whether to stop her. None dared. When she reached the top, she stood beside Elias, small, trembling, but unbroken. The crowd gasped. Grandfather, she called out, her voice carrying across the plaza. You said the Empire stands on strength. Then look at me. She lifted her crutch high, the blue light reflecting off her tear-streaked face. This is what your criminal built. I can stand because of him. I can walk because of his kindness. The crowd fell utterly silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Zareth's face darkened. Lyra, he said slowly, his voice edged with warning. Step down now, but she didn't move. You taught me that the Empire's heart beats with honor. But what honor is there in killing the only man who showed mercy? Her voice trembled, but it was full of courage. If you kill him, you kill that honor. You kill me. Gasps rippled through the thousands gathered. Some aliens in the crowd lowered their heads, not in obedience, but in shame. Zareth stood motionless on his balcony. For the first time, doubt flickered behind his golden eyes. Lyra took a step closer to the edge of the platform. Her voice rose again, strong and unwavering. Look at him. He's not your enemy. He's proof that goodness still exists beyond your walls. He gave me back my legs, but he gave you a chance to remember what it means to rule with compassion. A murmur of agreement rolled through the plaza. The guards looked at one another uncertainly. Some lowered their weapons. The Emperor's advisors whispered urgently, warning him of rebellion. But Zareth wasn't listening anymore. He looked down at the crowd, his people, thousands of them, and saw something he hadn't seen in years. Hope. He raised a hand slowly. The executioner froze. The air trembled as the Emperor's voice filled the plaza once more. Softer this time, yet far heavier. Release him. The guards hesitated, then obeyed. The chains fell from Elias's wrists, clattering to the ground. The crowd gasped again, then erupted in cheers. Some cried, others shouted, "Long live the princess!" Lyra turned to Elias, eyes shining. "You're free." Elias looked stunned. "You did this," he whispered. She smiled faintly. "No, human. We did this." On the balcony, Zareth watched them in silence. His voice, when it came, was low and weary. "From this day," he said, "no act of compassion will be punished within the Zarine Empire. Let it be written. Let it be remembered," the plaza roared. The law that had once enslaved mercy had just been broken by a child's defiance. Elias turned to the Emperor and bowed slightly, not out of fear, but respect. "You chose wisely, Your Majesty." Zareth gave no reply, only a long, heavy nod. As the suns climbed higher, the crowd dispersed, carrying with them the story of the human who built a crutch, and in doing so, helped an empire stand again. Lyra looked up at Elias and smiled. "You fixed more than my leg," she said softly. "You fixed their hearts," he smiled back. "Guess I'm better at repairs than I thought." And as the light bathed the plaza, two figures stood together, one human, one alien, symbols of a new dawn for a world that finally remembered how to walk.